Friends, I'm happy to announce that Straight Talk has partnered with Blue Line Roasting Company to bring you delicious coffee to enjoy while you listen to this podcast. Blue Line Roasting Company also serves our first responders by giving a portion of all net proceeds to numerous organizations who support them. Order today at bluelineroasting.com. That's bluelineroasting.com. And don't forget, when you join the Straight Shooter VIP Club, you receive a free coffee sample and a mug, plus invitations to private podcast events. The United Nations. Truce my ass. It's go time now for Israel. It's now or never to weed out these vermin from Hamas and Hezbollah. Hello once again to the Straight Talk podcast. I am your loyal host, former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, and more commonly referred to as America's Sheriff. We're going to talk about a couple of things in this episode. We're going to start with the ongoing situation in Israel and in the Gaza Strip as Israel continues to advance on its military operation to root out Hamas, the terrorist organization that controls the Gaza Strip. And I want to start with this in a different way. And I promised you when I started this podcast that I would do some things a little different and not just come on here and parrot what everybody else is saying, what everybody else is talking about. I find that to be boring. I challenge my audience to think. You know, God gave you a brain, use it. And I want to start with this term, and we hear it a lot as it relates to military operations. And that term, that word is propaganda. Propaganda goes back a long time ago. It's a tool of war. Since then, it's been used in other industries, but it originally began as a tool of war to convince people to your way of thinking. And in my graduate degree course, my master's degree course, one of the required readings was this book I'm holding in my hand, and it's called Propaganda. It's by Edward Bernays, and this goes back to 1928. And it says here on the cover, a fascinating and controversial look at how government and corporations control how we think and act. Propaganda outlines Edward Bernays' eerily prescient vision for regimenting the collective mind. Originally published in 1928, this manual of mass manipulation provides a detailed examination of how public discourse and opinion are shaped and controlled in politics, business, art, education, and science. In a world dominated by political spin and media manipulation, propaganda is an essential read for all who wish to understand how power is used by the ruling elites of our society. I want to start here, and I want to talk a little bit about propaganda before we get into some examples here, because it's being used extensively in this Israeli war, and it's being used by the supporters of the Palestinian state, the supporters of Hamas, all this crap that we're reading about in the New York Times and we're, that we hear on CNN, and I don't look at either of those things. But some of it you just can't miss. Right? I go through my news feeds and I see some of these stories, I pick them out, and I try to drill down inside, not just parrot what's in the article. And I look for these signs of propaganda. And I call it as such. I call it BS, because that's basically what propaganda is. So there's a couple things I want to read from the book here, and I'm not going to bore you. But if we don't have an understanding of the use of propaganda, I'll tell you right now, you're going to be susceptible to some of the BS that's coming out of these pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas groups as it relates to what Israel is doing, getting blamed for stuff. Remember a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, that hospital was bombed, and right away, everybody on the left, all of the anti-Semites, all of the Jew haters immediately blamed the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, for bombing a hospital. When things settled down, we found out later on that it was an errant Hamas rocket that hit near the hospital. It actually didn't hit the hospital. But it wasn't until 3 weeks later. And what's that saying? Something about, the truth can barely get out of bed before a lie travels halfway around the world. Something like that. That might not be exactly how it goes, but you get the point, right? The initial reporting was that Israel had bombed a hospital and that it had killed, 800 people, so on and so forth. And only when the truth started to boil to the surface did we find out that was not true. So anyway, to this book here, it says, whatever of social importance is done today, whether in politics, finance, manufacture, agriculture, charity, education, and other fields, must be done with the help of propaganda. Propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government. It says, the mechanism by which ideas are disseminated on a large scale is propaganda in the broad sense of an organized effort to spread a particular belief or doctrine. So when that report came out that Israel had bombed a hospital, the use of propaganda was very effective in the early days. Remember the first couple days after that? Oh, Israel screwed up. Oh, they're killing, they're shelling people, bombing hospitals and schools. So it goes on to say in the book here, any society, whether it be social, religious, or political, which is possessed of certain beliefs and sets out to make them known, either by the spoken or written words, is practicing propaganda. It says they will make use of the press and the platform as the best means to give it wide circulation. Propaganda becomes vicious and reprehensible only when its authors consciously and deliberately disseminate what they know to be lies, or when they aim at effects which they know to be prejudicial to the common good. So now let's look at some examples of this that have come out in the media as this war goes on. First of all, I'm pleased that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has basically vetoed any attempt right now to cease fire. And he's being pressured through the use of propaganda on the other side. Oh, the children of Palestine. Oh, the women and children. Oh, the schools. I mean, you had some report last week of a top Hamas leader who was killed in a drone strike by the IDF, Israeli Defense Force. He was riding in an ambulance. And as a result of striking that ambulance and killing him, there's some collateral damage, and it was reported 25 people nearby were killed. That's called collateral damage in war. War is ugly. Sometimes in the execution of a war, civilians get killed, but Israel is not targeting Palestinian citizens. And when that report came out about the bombing of that, or the drone strike on that ambulance, you didn't hear anybody on the left, the anti-Semites, you didn't hear any of them saying, why is this Hamas commander driving around in an ambulance? Nobody wanted to have a discussion about that. It was, 25 people were killed in collateral damage. But anyway, several times now, the UN, and you know my position on the UN, and Blinken, Secretary of State, have tried to engage Netanyahu in an idea of a ceasefire. Why? For humanitarian purposes. What about the humanitarian purposes when Hamas targeted on October 7th Israeli neighborhoods, a music concert where they slaughtered 250 Israeli young people attending a music concert? Where was the humanitarian call then? The kidnapping, the rape of Israeli women, the kidnapping, the beheading of children by Hamas. I didn't hear anything about humanitarian. Let me tell you something right now. The words Hamas and humanitarian should never be used in the same sentence. Never. So I'm glad to see that Netanyahu's going to do what's in the best interest of Israel. I've been to Israel. I think I said that. Twice I've been. 2 different missions. And I've visited schools, Israeli schools. You know, they're built like fortresses. They're built like bunkers to withstand rocket attacks coming from either Hezbollah in the northern region or Gaza in the western region. Rocket attacks, indiscriminate rocket attacks where schools are targeted. You know, these kids can't play outside. And I'm talking about like when it's nice outside. They can't play outside. They have to play in fortified recreational areas, an area that can withstand a rocket attack. And the reason they have to do this, they can't let them play outside, is because when the rockets are coming in, and they don't just fire one at a time, they can't get the children back into this fortified school fast enough. So they build schools with fortified recreational areas. What the hell kind of quality of life is that? Where's the humanitarianism and the calls for humanitarianism for the Israeli citizens when Hamas and Hezbollah are purposely targeting civilians? You never hear it. So it seems that Netanyahu is going to stand strong, and he's basically said it ain't happening. We are not pausing until this is done. Here's from an article here, Politico. It says a New York Times opinion piece published Friday. Remember that term, propaganda? Herzog wrote, and that's the Israeli president is Herzog. He wrote that anyone who thinks a cynical exploitation of civilian suffering will tie our hands and save Hamas this time is wrong. Bam! What he's referencing is propaganda. He says, and let me say that again, anyone who thinks the cynical exploitation of civilian suffering will tie our hands and save Hamas this time is wrong. For us and the Palestinians, the suffering will only end after the removal of Hamas. Anyone trying to tie our hands is intentionally or not undermining not only Israel's defense, but also any hope of a world where these atrocities cannot happen. So there's one use of propaganda in this whole Israel and Hamas war. Also, here's another one. This one really chaps my rear end. This comes from, let's see what the source, World News. Israel, Gaza. I don't know who that's the name of the article or the source of the article here, but it says more children killed in Gaza this month than conflict zones for all of 2022. The number of Palestinian children killed in Gaza over the past 3 weeks has officially exceeded the number of children who died in conflict zones around the world each year since 2019, according to human rights groups. First of all, here's another example of use of propaganda. Where are these human rights groups when Hamas and Hezbollah are intermittently sending rockets over into Israeli neighborhoods and schools? Where is it? Where are these human rights groups? They don't give a damn. So it goes on to say here, and by the way, here's something else to think about. Remember after the October 7th attack, there was actual visual footage. It was on the news, video footage of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip who were out celebrating in the streets the carnage that happened on October 7th. And so now I'm supposed to feel, what, empathy for the Palestinians? They were celebrating that vicious attack that killed over, 1,500 to 2,000 people, including 250 kids at a music concert, including beheading children, raping women, and then taking hostages. Those are the same Palestinians I'm now supposed to, have a soft spot in my heart? So it goes on to say here, since the Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel and Israel's ongoing retaliation on the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, at least 3,257 children have been reported killed, according to the nonprofit Save the Children. That's propaganda. That's all it is. Manipulation. It says here, according to the health ministries in Israel and Gaza, respectively, 29 of those children were killed in Israel, 33 in the West Occupied Bank, and 3,195 in Gaza. First of all, and when you want to understand how propaganda works, you have to peel the layers back. Where's the evidence of this? Where's the proof? that 3,195 children have been killed in Gaza since Israel started their military operation. Where's the proof? That's just propaganda. Because most people would see that, oh my God. Because when I saw that, I said, where's the evidence? Where's the proof? How do they come up with that number, 3,195? Is there a head count? I don't believe any of this. So there's another example. It says human rights groups, and they all have an agenda. All right, if you see the term or the name human rights groups, it's left-leaning. These are anti-Semites anyway. It's left-leaning. Because, like I said, where are these human rights groups? When Israel's under attack, where were they on October 8th, the day after this massacre that happened in there? I didn't hear from one human rights group. I didn't hear from one person stand up and say, hey, stop the violence. No, nothing. Silence, crickets. So it says here, human rights groups have likened the ongoing assault on Gaza to ethnic cleansing. See, there we go again. Ethnic cleansing. That's propaganda. It's BS. It's the manipulation of people's minds to get them to side with Hamas and the Palestinians. So it says many have called for a ceasefire, noting the airstrikes, blockades, evacuation orders, and now ground operations are causing mass death and suffering among civilians. What about the Israeli civilians? Of nearly 2,000 who were massacred on October 7th. What about that mass death and the suffering? Where's the empathy for Israeli citizens? Goes on to say here, here's a goof from Jason Lee from the Save the Children country director. Quote, one child's death is one too many, but these are grave violations of epic proportions. That's propaganda. That's all it is. Trying to manipulate you, move you into a certain direction through your mind. One death is too many. Really? As Hamas and Hezbollah and as people, Palestinians on October 8th, the day after that massacre, were in the streets celebrating, talking about death to Israel? Is that a grave violation of epic proportion? And here's another thing about one child's death is too many. What about abortion? Where are these groups' positions, or what are these groups' positions on abortion? Save the one child's too many? One child's death is too many? Really? You know darn well these people support abortion. You know they do. So it says here, this article goes on to say that every day spent debating is leaving children killed and injured. Children must be protected at all times, this quote says from this goof. Children must be protected at all times. How about the protection of children in the womb, Mr. Lee? And it says here, especially when they are seeking safety in schools and hospitals. Schools are always under attack from Hamas with these rockets. All year long, this goes on. I was there. I went to a nearby police station. By the way, they swore me in as an honorary member of the Israeli police force. Symbolic. And they took me down to where they have recovered the mortar shells, the shells, after a rocket attack. And it was jaw-dropping. There were like over 500 that they said, oh, this is just from the last month. And then we got to move these out to make room for the new ones that they recover after a mortar attack. I said, you got to be kidding me. Where are the humanitarian groups then? They're nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. So now here's another example. It's why you have to be critical readers when you read this stuff. And you got to look at the source. You got to figure out what their agenda is because they all have an agenda. New York Times has an agenda. It's left-leaning. CNN has an agenda. You know what? Fox News has an agenda. Don't get me wrong. So you have to read critically, whether it's Fox News, whether it's CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post. I'm just telling you to read critically. Peel the layers back. Drill down into the story. Figure out what's the agenda here. What are they? And it's all propaganda. These opinion pieces from these editorial boards, it's all propaganda. They're trying to get you to their way of thinking. And so you have to read critically. Otherwise, you'll just sop this stuff up like a sponge. And you'll be susceptible to the propaganda. Anyway, I went to a different source here. This is from the Israeli Times. Yeah, there is such a thing. So I spread it around. I cited Politico. I cited New York Times here in their opinion piece. I found this one from the Israeli Times. A different view of this damn situation in the war. While Hamas hoards Gaza's resources, civilians face a humanitarian crisis. The UN Relief Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, announced this week that Gaza is facing a humanitarian catastrophe as it runs out of essential supplies such as food, water, medicine, and fuel. Now, that's not good in and of itself. That's not good. This article goes on to say, clean water is beginning to run out after Israel reduced the daily supply from 49 million liters before October 7th to 28.5 million liters, or just about in half. The last remaining seawater desalination plant out of the 4 serving central and southern Gaza shut down on October 15th due to a lack of fuel, presenting a risk of dehydration as people resort to drinking contaminated water or digging wells in the ground. Okay, so far I haven't jumped to any conclusions in reading this story. I mean, I can't say that that's not true with, what's going on. They cite the data here, right? 49 million down to, that's data. So it says UNRWA warned on Wednesday that there's a serious concern of waterborne diseases due to the collapse of sanitation services and the scarcity of water. Meanwhile, Hamas has been hoarding Gaza's resources to continue its military campaign against Israel. And you wonder why Netanyahu's is saying and will not entertain the idea of a ceasefire? The IDF, Israeli Defense Force, said on October 24th that Hamas possesses vast fuel reserves of about 500,000 liters, a claim that was confirmed by Western and Arab officials to the New York Times. You think the New York Times printed that? Of course they didn't. Goes against their propaganda. So in other words, remember I started this article out and it says their desalination tanks can't run because of the scarcity of fuel? And Hamas is hoarding the damn fuel. Instead of using it for humanitarian purposes, they're using it to continue their war effort. And we're supposed to feel sorry. We're supposed to say, yeah, maybe we should, pressure Israel into a ceasefire. Hell no. So it goes on to say here, because here, remember, this is the Israeli Times. This is somebody else's view, not CNN, not the Save the Children, not all these other leftist, anti-Semitic Jew haters. This is a different view of what's going on. And I'm not saying everything I'm reading here is true. I'm just saying, well, it's a different narrative than we were hearing before that I started out this thing as, or with. A little different, isn't it? And that's why I encourage you all to read critically, find different sources, find 2 or 3 different sources. And you know what? A lot of it will conflict, but that's okay. It's not all supposed to say the same, but it will allow you the information you need to come to your own conclusion. That's all. So it says here, a senior Lebanese official told the newspaper, the Israeli Times, that Hamas has enough supplies to sustain fighting for 3 or 4 months without a need for resupply. And Israel should stop? The terror group, Hamas, has also allegedly been stockpiling food keeping it from Gazan residents who are in desperate need. Now, remember the other story that I was reading? It's, oh, the children are starving. Oh, the people are starving. Oh, the waterborne diseases. Hamas is causing this. They're hoarding food that's meant for humanitarian purposes, which is why when these people come up and talk, oh, humanitarian, we got to get some humanitarian aid. You're just helping Hamas. And I don't hear any of these groups, by the way, the ones I mentioned, I hear none of them. The New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, Save the Children, all these other, I heard none of them saying, you know what, Hamas is doing some dastardly stuff here. No, it's all, Israel's got to stop. Well, the Palestinian children, the women. It's propaganda, ladies and gentlemen. So it says here the terror group is also, like I said, that been stockpiling food that's meant for Gazan residents. So here, as Paul Harvey would say, is the rest of the story from the Israeli Times. Hamas is causing all this crap, yet you see all these people, college campuses here, other places throughout the world, with empathy and sympathy for the Palestinians. BS. So it says here, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, that should spark that should be a trigger for you. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, more than 9,000 Palestinians have been killed in war, and more than 22,000 have been wounded. Now, I don't doubt that there aren't casualties, but they're not reporting facts. They have no way of, this is all propaganda. They have no way of reporting this stuff accurately. The figure, which could not be confirmed. Oh, my God, I'm surprised. The figure can't be confirmed. You know why? Because it's propaganda and there's no evidence of it. That's why it can't be confirmed. It would be without precedent in decades of Israeli-Palestinian violence. Hamas has been accused by some of artificially inflating the death toll, and they do not distinguish between civilian and terror operatives. Some of the dead are believed to be victims of Palestinian terrorists' own misfired rockets. You see what I mean? And do you see why I started this off with the term propaganda? It's used extensively in war, but it's especially used by terror groups to influence your way of thinking to their way of thinking. It's manipulation. It's like I said in the definition, the misuse of propaganda can be dangerous because it's based on lies. It's not information, which is why you have to always read critically. The other thing I'm happy to report is that Speaker Mike Johnson, House of Representatives, Speaker of the House, they put forth an Israeli aid package, standalone, and that's what he should have done. Biden and the White House and the Democrats, they want it as a package with Ukrainian aid. No, enough Ukraine. You know my position on that. Enough of that. Time for them to get to the peace table, peace talks. There's where the ceasefire should be called. Ukraine. I've talked about the humanitarian angle of humanitarianism to stop that war over there. But no, you don't hear that. They only hear it, when it comes to Israel. But anyway, Schumer didn't want this. Biden doesn't want it. A standalone. I'll tell you why I think this is important. The House passed it. You know what's interesting? The House passed it, and 12 Democrats joined mostly all of the Republicans to pass the measure. But this isn't called, that infamous bipartisan. It's not called bipartisan. It's called the GOP bill. No, 12 Democrats signed on with it. Whenever the opposite is true, one Republican signs on with every Democrat, it's referred to as bipartisan. Anyway, here's why I think this is important. First of all, Mike Johnson shouldn't give a damn what Biden or Schumer want. And you know what? McConnell wants a combined effort too. I don't know what the hell's wrong with Mitch McConnell. He's on the wrong side of this, but one of the things that Kevin McCarthy, one of the problems I have with McCarthy is that he seemed to be willing to go along with whatever Chuck Schumer wanted. Whenever McCarthy made a move, he went over first and talked to Chuck Schumer. Hey, what do you think about this? We're thinking of passing. We're thinking of moving on this. The hell should he care about what Chuck Schumer wants? The Republicans control the House. Pass a Republican bill and send it over to the Senate. Let them, they said, well, dead on arrival. Well, you know what? Give it a vote. This is where you start your PR campaign. If you're Mike Johnson, hey, we sent it over. Come on, you say support Israel. Show me. And force Schumer. When I say force, I'm talking about because of public pressure and public opinion, because it matters, and we're a year out from the 2024 election. So public support matters. Lean on the public and say, hey, come on, we passed it. I want Schumer to have to put this to a vote because we're going to find out. Oh, we're going to find out who really stands with Israel on this thing. That's why I like it put forth the way it was. Because you now can't let these anti-Semites say, well, the only reason I really passed this because it included the Ukraine aid and I'm for that. And I am not really for the other stuff. No, this is standalone. Thumbs up or thumbs down. We're going to find out. Get them on the record. Get these Democrats on the record as having vetoed in the Senate, having vetoed this $14.3 billion aid package to Israel. Get them on the record because you can run with that in ads next November. This guy claims to support Israel, but he voted against, the package. You can use it strategically. So I'm glad that he did that, Mike Johnson. So far, so good. Again, I want to still kick the tires on him. But I'm liking how he's handling this thing. He's doing okay out of the gate. And I like what he stands for besides that, his background, so on and so forth. But anyway, that's enough on the Israeli-Hamas war. I want to get into this, turning the page here. I saw this story and it made my stomach turn. Government overreach, that's what this is about. Our government and its constitutional republic. And the government overreaching, trampling on people's rights with impunity. No accountability. So this article here comes from 13abc.com. In plain sight, drug agents searching passengers for cash at airport gates. Agents search carry-on bags without getting warrants and seize money without making arrests. Now, let me sort this out for you. This is not the TSA process. What this is the person has gone through TSA, their bags have been screened, they're either walking around on the secure part of the airport or getting ready to board an airliner, and they're jacked up by these government law enforcement agencies who are demanding to search their bags. Bags have already been screened, but the TSA's got nothing to do with this. They're already passed through the TSA. I find the TSA process overreach. 20 years, however many years we're out now. Initially, this was fine. That needs to come to an end. The intrusiveness. Okay, you want to have somebody walk through a metal detector? That's not intrusive. What's intrusive is when they go through your damn carry-on with no probable cause. They can't say, hey, there's something in here that looks like an explosive device. There's, that would be the probable cause or the reasonable suspicion. It looks suspicious. Well, anything's suspicious. So anyway, you've gone through the TSA screening, passed with flying colors, and now you're just either walking through the airport, you're at the gate, or you're at the jet bridge. And you're jacked up by these thugs. That's what they are. Government thugs. I'll read some of this. This is going to take me a while to get through, but that's okay because you need to be aware that this stuff's going on, and you need to know because actually it catches people off guard. I get it. Some guy comes and just flashes something in front of you, and I'm with the government, and give me your ID, and all. You just want to cooperate, right? You just, hey, look, I'm just trying to, here's my ID, and oh yeah, you can. No, you got to stop this. This is unlawful. There's nothing consensual about what these government agents are doing. It's coercion. And if you did this while interrogating a criminal under arrest, the confession would get thrown out. Confessions have to be informed and not coerced. So it says here, Investigative TV, who did this story, recently tailed U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration officers as they walked otherwise unnoticed from gate to gate at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. It's in Atlanta. Reporters watched them search passengers right after they scanned their boarding passes. He just approached me and asked me for my ID, film director Tabari Sturdivant said. He didn't state who he was. He just asked me for ID, and I thought he was a Delta agent. See, he catch people off guard. He's getting on a Delta plane. He thinks it's a Delta agent. He had airport credentials, so I gave it to him immediately, his ID. And I said to myself when I first started reading, why? Well, because he asked me for, I don't care. You don't know who this goof is, and you have a right to know that. You have a right to see their credentials, not have them flash something in front of your face. And I ask him, why are you stopping me? And do I have the right to continue on? If I do, get out of my way. I'm about to board the plane. But people are afraid to do that because, well, I just want to cooperate. I just want to get over this. And we got to stop this. This is oppression. So it says Sturdivant was flying to Los Angeles for a film project last year when he was approached by the DEA task force officers. They searched his bag in front of other passengers boarding the flight, according to a video recorded by an onlooker. So this is on video. Film director said the agents asked him, are you high? Have you smoked? Do you have any drugs in the bag? Do you have any money? You don't have to answer those questions. First of all, you need to determine who the hell is this goof. And don't let them just flash something in front of your face. Ask for their names. You have the right to know who these people are. So ask for their name. Can I see that again? I didn't get to read that. Where does it say law enforcement? Because the guy said they look like airport credentials. Airport credentials are not law enforcement credentials. A Delta agent with airport credentials does not have the right to say, I want to search your bag. Neither does a law enforcement officer without probable cause or consent. And the consent has to be voluntary. Well, it was voluntary because he said, yeah, go ahead. No, under what? Under the threat of not making my flight? Under the threat of not being arrested? I don't know what you get arrested for, but I get why people do that. They're not looking for trouble. Guy's trying to get on a damn Delta flight and get to his destination. So it says here, Investigative TV found several similar cases where officers with the DEA task force or local police searched innocent people on jet bridges. On the jet bridge. You're walking onto the airline. The airliner. Or they seized their money without making any arrests. What? Narcotics officers searched an actor, this is somebody else who got caught up in this, on a jet bridge of a flight in Atlanta in 2020. Officers didn't find anything in his carry-on, but they continued to ask him questions. Have you ever been arrested before? One of the officers asked. Ellie politely but firmly responded, don't worry about it, man. Just hurry up and check the bags and hurry so I can get back on my flight, please. See, that's the normal reaction. I get it. You got to slow this down when you get accosted like this, and that's what this is. This isn't a legal or lawful detention. You're not being lawfully detained. You're being accosted. Are you high? You have any money? None of your business. Who are you guys? Let me see. Give me your names. And if you have your phone in your hand, turn on the video or the audio recorder, whatever. Get some of this captured so that you can come back later and say, yeah, it was DE Agent Jones and DE Agent Johnson. And not just say, I don't know. I don't know who it was. They told me they were. And just slow it down, ladies and gentlemen. When you're being jacked up like this, wait a minute. Can we search your bag? Why? Do you have a warrant? No, we don't need a warrant. Yes, you do. Now get out of my way. Am I free to go? You got to ask them that. Am I free to go? Because you know what the answer is yes. So it says here, Ellie said it was a humiliating experience. Yeah, you're damn right it is. I find this offensive that in our country, a representative democracy, a constitutional republic, we're getting treated like this is some dictatorship where they can do this kind of stuff to their citizens. So one of these guys ended up filing a lawsuit, and that's still in the works. But anyway, it says the lawsuit claims these encounters are neither random nor consensual. There's some nonprofit law agency that's handling these, a class action suit. You're right, it's not random, and it's not consensual. So it says both local police records and federal court documents show drug agents working at the busiest airports in the world rarely find drugs on passengers at departing gates. See, in order to conduct these kind of operations, you have to have reason to do it. And it says here they rarely find drugs on passengers at departing gates. Records show agents have seized millions of dollars from passengers at boarding gates at Atlanta's airport alone. The money administratively forfeited is administratively forfeited as the proceeds of drug trafficking, even when no drugs are found. They just take your money. First of all, anytime a law enforcement officer takes property from you, they have to give you a receipt. You know, most people don't know that. You know that when you're arrested and you're in the booking room, take everything out of your pockets, take your belt off, and they put all your property in an inventory bag, they have to give you a copy of the inventory by law. So you know what was taken from you, and you can prove it later. If you had money or your watch in there or whatever and it's gone, you can go, no, it's right here. So we give it to criminals after an arrest. Now that's a search incident to an arrest. That's a whole different animal. You have not been arrested at the airport. They took property from you. They're supposed to give you a receipt. Most people don't know that. Because if they're going to keep my money, if they did this to me, then where's my receipt? So it says, agents generally do not arrest the passenger. They arrest their money. So they found dozens of these cases are filed in federal court under this lawsuit. It says passengers must file a claim within 45 days of receiving official notice that the government has seized their money or it's automatically forfeited. Most cases never go before a judge. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not constitutional process. After drug agents find the money, passengers are sometimes forced to pull up bank statements on their phones or otherwise provide proof the money isn't from drug trafficking. You do not need to prove it's not from drug trafficking. It's the government that has to prove that it is. And not because they think it is. In other words, you have a drug-sniffing dog come over and sniff, and if the dog hits on it, oh, you know what? And you put some stuff together, a number of things, that forms your reasonable suspicion. That's a lower level than probable cause. That's forms your reasonable suspicion to at least hold on to it for now. Or here's your receipt, and we're keeping this because a dog hit on it, and you can make a claim later, and here's how you do that, so on and so forth. So it says, merely flying from Atlanta to Los Angeles is suspicious according to multiple probable cause statements because it's a known drug trafficking route. So it means everybody on that damn flight from Atlanta to L.A. is suspected of being involved in drug trafficking. That you randomly pull one guy out not based on any information, or let's say an informant says, hey, David Clarke's about to board a flight from Atlanta to L.A. He's got $10,000 in his, he got $1 million in his carry-on, and he's going to buy drugs. Okay. That's reasonable suspicion to look for David Clarke on the flight, not a random guy, and say, hey, you high? Where's your drugs? Give us a, how, what are you doing? No. There's a difference, ladies and gentlemen. They're not acting on any reasonable suspicion. So it says, the U.S. Department of Justice Inspector General noted the lack of follow-up investigations, meaning they seize this money because they think it's involved in drug trafficking, and they don't do any follow-up, and they just keep it. It says the DEA, according to this Inspector General, the DEA and its state and local partners risk creating the appearance that they're more interested in seizing the forfeiting cash than advancing a potential criminal investigation. Yeah, because they don't have a criminal investigation. They're just doing this willy-nilly. So it says here, according to the IG, they're not out there looking for a crime. They're out there looking for money. So then it goes into this why and what's the upside. Well, it's called this asset forfeiture, and that's a topic for another day. But they seize the money, and then they get to split it and keep it. Asset forfeiture. It's a controversial thing that the Supreme Court has delved into a little bit, and they told these government agencies, you guys better be careful because we're about to slap you down on this. This seizing assets with no basis. So it says airline passengers must submit to a security screening by the TSA, and that's to get into the secure. We all know that. Again, I think that needs to come to an end, but that's a discussion for another day. Passengers don't surrender their Fourth Amendment rights against warrantless searches by police just because they're at the airport, according to multiple legal analysts and court documents. And that's what I'm getting at here. There's no legal basis for this. You need to stand up for yourself in these situations. First, gather your wits, because, this could be startling, right? A guy goes, hey, give me some ID. Let me see what you got. And he flashes something at you. It's, hey, okay, just, hold on a second. Yeah, it's startling. Slow it down. Well, just hold on a second. Who are you? Start with that question. First question, not what did I do? Who are you? We're federal agents. Do you have names? Can I see your badges? And they're all supposed to carry photo ID. They're from their agency. It's the DEA or FBI. And it's got their picture on it. Tell me you want to see it. And, make a mental note. Okay, it says DEA Agent Johnson. Remember the name. So it says what they call it, the DEA officially calls it stops and searches at airports, cold consent encounters. Passengers are free to end the discussion and walk away, according to the DEA, even if they're unaware of those rights. Yeah, but most people aren't, and they're not going to try that. Next thing you know, they get thrown to the ground. They're accused of resisting arrest. I get it. That's what you got to ask. Am I free to leave? If they lie to you, man, they're in big trouble now. Am I free to leave? Because it's false arrest if they say, no, you're not. Yes, you are. Because they have not told you you're under arrest or they're conducting an investigation. They have to be specific with you. So just ask them, am I free to leave? I'm trying to get on a plane here. They're really supposed to say, supposed to is the key word. Yeah, you can go. So it says here, federal judge recently dismissed the lawsuit filed by this nonprofit group because he said, here's the thing, this judge, listen to this. He dismissed the lawsuit because they should have known their stops were consensual and not a detention. How is the average person supposed to know that? When a cop or law enforcement officer temporarily detains you, you do have an obligation to kind of like stand there. But you get to ask some questions too. What are you accusing me of doing? Well, we think you might be involved in drug narcotics trade. Based on what? Who are you guys? Can we search your bag? And most people, because they don't have drugs on them, are going to say, yeah, go ahead. I'm not. I find that offensive. No, you can't search my bag. Go get a warrant. It's my right under the Constitution. Exercise your rights. I just want to cooperate and get it. I understand most people are going to do that. That only encourages this sort of crap. So the judge said the men were free to go even if they felt trapped by police on the jet bridge. Well, no, most people aren't just going to walk away. Next thing you know, they're on the ground eating carpet and their hands put behind their back, and the officer will say, I was conducting an investigation and they resisted and they obstructed, and now you got a different problem. So I understand why people want it, but just ask questions. If you're not getting the answers, just keep asking the question. Get your supervisor here right now. Others who have been searched at the boarding gate said they felt coerced, pressured, or gave consent under duress. That's the thing. That is not a voluntary consent search. It has to be voluntary. And it can be interpreted as coerced if they say, if you don't let us do this, we're going to arrest you. Well, nobody wants to get arrested and do anything. Yeah, go ahead, because you're not going to find anything, then I can go. No, that's coercion. So it says in 2015, the Department of Justice Inspector General told the DEA it should stop causing confusion by referring to the searches as a secondary inspection. See, they come up with secondary inspection. You just went through the TSA. That's the only one you're required to go through to get on an airline. So in an encounter 8 years later, a passenger's recording, good thing the passenger had this recorded, showed a DEA task force officer telling the man, we're no different than TSA. Oh, yes, you are. The agent added, people like to give us a little more hard time than they give the TSA. Yeah, because you can't get on the airplane if you're going to give the TSA a hard time. That's called a de minimis search. The legal term meaning, it's not that big. Just put it through the damn X-ray machine, and most of the time it just goes through, and that's the end of it. De minimis. So it says here, the same video showed some of the leverage DEA task force officers can use to gain consent. You're either going to sign a consent form saying that you are allowing us to search your bags, the drug agent told the passenger. See, that's not voluntary. Or I'm going to detain them, run my dog on it, and get a search warrant. Tell them, go get the search warrant. Go get it. Because they'll never be able to get one under those circumstances. They know that, you don't, but I do. And I'm telling you, I'm informing you, I'm on your side on this. Go get a search warrant. Probably going to bring this encounter to an end at that point. They don't have probable cause to get a search warrant. So it says no drugs were found, but the agents did find money and they seized it. This is a 10-page story. I think you get the point. This may happen to you. This doesn't just happen like, well, I'm not a criminal. That's, stuff criminals, they got to be worried about it. No, you got to be worried about it. Tired of this government overreach. Tired of it. The FBI does it. The ATF does it. The DEA does it. The United States Department of Justice does it. Local police do it. And I'm tired of it. So I'm just here to kind of help you out. Slow it down. Gather information, just like they're trying to gather information. Who are you? When the cop comes up, can I see some ID? And they're not in uniform. See, that's a big difference here, too. They're just dressed in civilian clothes. You don't know that these are law enforcement officers just because they say they are? What a scam criminals could do. Come up to you and say, hey, let me see some ID and I want to search your bag. I'm law enforcement. And they're not, and they rob you or they steal, find valuables and take it and flee. They're in plain clothes. They got to have a photo ID with their agency name on it and their picture and a badge. Just ask for it. They're in plain clothes. Now, when a cop's standing there in uniform, he's got his name on it or her on the shirt. All wearing nameplates. They're in uniform. You can see, yeah, it's a Milwaukee police uniform. Yeah, that's an NYPD uniform. I got a badge with a number on it. City of Milwaukee Police, NYPD, and a number on it. So you can look at it, without having to say, who are you, and so on and so forth. And you can get that information, but not these plainclothes guys. They're running roughshod on people. That stuff has to stop. Enjoy your week. You talk about race, crime, and politics. Some folks lose sleep over this, but not me, because I sleep just fine on my Giza Dream Sheets and pillow from My Pillow, especially this new 2.0. If you haven't gotten yours yet, you are missing out. Just go to mypillow.com and use promo code Clarke, that's CLARKE, and save up to 66% off. The direct link is also available on my website, americasheriff.com. Get a great night's sleep so we can continue the fight. Friends, I want to thank you for listening to today's episode of Straight Talk with yours truly, America Sheriff David Clarke. And a special thank you also goes out to our sponsors. My goal, as always, is to break down these complex and many times controversial issues and bring it to you straight with a little dose of common sense, no media bias, no talking points, just truth. And this podcast would not be possible without your support. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please leave a review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite place to listen. And please share this message of common sense on social media. For more content, be sure to follow me on Truth Social, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And just a reminder, we'd love for you to join our Straight Shooters VIP Podcast Club for only $5 per month. And with that membership, you'll receive invitations to attend private podcast events throughout the year as a VIP guest when we come to your town. Plus, if you join today, you'll also receive a free coffee mug and a sample of our private label coffee as long as supplies last. Subscribe and join at americasheriff.com. This podcast is brought to you by americasheriff.com with executive producer Judy Wilkinson of J.L. Wilkinson Consulting and producer Josh Wentz in partnership with our friends at Bulldog Media. If you are interested in partnering with Straight Talk Podcasts or having me speak in your area, please contact Judy at jlwilkinsonconsulting@gmail.com, 706-518-2116. That's jlwilkinsonconsulting@gmail.com. Phone number 706-518-2116.